Hey everybody. If you don't know who Stephen Quast is, I'll give you a brief summary of who this guy is, right? He's the head of the Space Force. He's a retired Air Force Lieutenant General. And he has been groomed for a high up position by Kraut-Slob's World Economic Forum, John F. Kennedy School of Government. He has been there with all of these so-called young leaders that are in positions of power in many countries all over Europe and the rest of the world right now. Now, the reason why I'm talking about him is because I have recently seen a video of him on the Sean Ryan podcast. And Sean Ryan has got a pretty big podcast, and he has interviewed a lot of, prominent people, famous people. He has had Dr. Stephen Greer on his podcast, even that thing Gavin Newsom. He's had Tom Homan, the ICE guy, Ben Carson, that nut job, Vivek Ramaswamy, he's had him on. He's had that Romanian presidential candidate, Calin Georgescu, he's had him on. So they're not, he's not hanging around with small people. He's hanging around with some of the top people in this world. And he had Stephen Quast on from the Space Force. And it was a 3-hour video. I haven't gotten to the end of it yet. I had to stop it because I was bombarded with advertisements. And as I'm in France, the advertisements were French. And they were using a guy, same ad, constantly getting hit with the same ad with a guy with a bloody speech impediment, would you believe it? Imagine listening to French and then listening to French from a guy with a speech impediment. I couldn't watch the end of the video. I had to stop. It was 2 hours through it. Anyway, they're talking about the moon and China mining Helium-3 on the far side of the moon, right? So I said, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to listen to this here because I have made a couple of videos on this guy, Stephen Quast. And I would advise anybody, probably 2 of my most powerful videos, I would advise anybody to go back and look at those 2 videos. I'll put the names of the videos in the description. I can't post a link if they're too long. I'm a smartphone illiterate person, actually, really. The first video is called Space Force Moon Race. Buckle up, we're going for a ride. And that was Stephen Quast speaking to Hillsdale College in Florida. And my other video is Marine Traffic Map and a Kiribati human carpet. Funny names for videos, aren't they? But anyhow. So Stephen Quast has been going on both videos about China mining on the far side of the moon. Now, when he did the video on Hillsdale College, he wasn't speaking to a bunch of morons or speaking to, like, it's a bit like TED Talks, but you're not going to find hippies and conspiracy theorists and people like that in the audience. The people in the audience were all millionaires and billionaires who are interested in making money in the future. Now, he told the people in Hillsdale College that China was mining on the far side of the moon. China had ships in outer space. But first he said, if you're standing on the beach in Florida and you're looking out across the ocean, that ocean is deep space. And there is a continent out there, south of the South Pole, this is how he described it, 3 times the size of Africa, and it's called the moon. So he was telling the truth to the people in Hillsdale College about the moon, and the Chinese have ships in the outer space, which is the ocean, and they are going forward and back to this moon, continent 3 times the size of Africa, and mining. I don't know what they're mining. I don't know what helium-3 is. I think he said in the interview that an ounce of it is worth billions of dollars. I have to go back over it again. In the interview with Sean Ryan. Helium doesn't weigh anything, so how could you get an ounce of it? This is something I don't understand. He has told a load of lies. Or untruths. Let's just say he's omitting the truth. And at the same time, on the Sean Ryan clip show, he's using the word global, while he knows in his heart of hearts that this world that we live on is not a globe. So, on the Sean Ryan clip, he's telling the same story that he told to Hillsdale College, but he's giving the impression for the world that the moon he's talking about is the light in the sky, and he's referring to outer space. He should have said upper space, because upper space and outer space are 2 different places. Upper space is unverifiable. Upper space is said to be a vacuum. You cannot have a vacuum next to a pressurized system without a container. All the stars are the same distance. They're in some type of plasmic sludge, put it that way. There is no outer space. There is no vacuum of space. But the outer space that he's talking about is out, not up. Like out, looking at the space at the end of your garden. That type of space. So on my video, Marine Traffic Map, I found giant ships that don't exist in this world. The largest ship in this world, if you look it up, is 443 meters. But these ships that the Chinese are going out across the endless ocean to this continent 3 times the size of Africa called the moon for their mining operations are not built here within our realm. They're from outside. Now, many decades ago, I heard from a very wise old man who said that the Chinese race were a race of extraterrestrials. Now, I knew he wasn't lying, but I could never understand it, because in my heart of hearts, from a very early age, I knew there was no such thing as space travel, the way that they described it to us. You are in a rocket flying through a vacuum. But decades later, when I finally discovered that we live on a level ocean that is endless, and there are many, many, many solar systems outside of our solar system, out across the ocean, And when I discovered the Chinese ships going up and down through Antarctica and beyond, and then I heard this Air Force General Stephen Quast talking about Chinese in outer space mining. Like I say, I don't know what they're mining, but he says helium-3. Then it hit me that it is highly likely that this is where the Chinese race originated from. There wasn't any sign of them in this world up until about 200 years ago. All the mummies that are found in China are all Caucasian, red-haired, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, green-eyed. So the Chinese have been navigating these oceans for centuries. And in some of the old world maps, you can see on the maps drawings of these big ships that far south and beyond, with cathodes, positive and negative cathodes on them, like they were electric. Because this technology has been around since the dawn of time. So the Chinese have been going up and down this guy, Stephen Quast, was talking about the potential for a war in the outer space for resources. Now, anyone with half a brain would not be able to understand what he's talking about if you think that you're on a spinning ball flying through a scientifically impossible space vacuum. But when you see that they have no control over these Chinese ships that are coming up and down, that apparently they've got craft that can move at incredible speed. They have got weapons beyond our imagination. This is what this guy's talking about, right? And the Americans don't, so they're being left behind. He's saying that the Chinese have already fired a few shots across the bows of the Americans in their quest to get to this moon and to get a chunk of it for themselves, right? Now, whatever they are mining, helium-3 or some other very precious commodity, they are going to need manpower to do that. And the stories were floating around for this past few months, and in the past few months, that there are 400 million people missing in China. Cities with 20, 30 million people in them are empty. The countryside and the villages are empty. So where have all these people gone? Now, a ship, and this might not be the biggest ship that they have, which is 650 meters long and 90 meters wide, you would fit a shitload of Chinese people on them. You could easily lure them somewhere where they can be loaded upon these ships, sent back out across the ocean, past Antarctica, into the wild, to arrive at a continent that may not be too different than this. There may be cities down there that may not be too different to the cities in China. The same people, the same language, the same extraterrestrial alphabet and numerical system that they brought up here with us that we can't understand. The same facilities. So it may not be too different. Life out there in a Chinese city and life up here in what we call China in a Chinese city. Plus, in China, they've got a very fast rail network, when a train pulls up to a platform in China, thousands of Chinese people squeeze in. They don't mind being squeezed together in small places. Is it possible? Now, we've all heard stories of tunnels under the earth that go from continent to continent, and old world high-speed rail networks that used these tunnels. Old world, whether you want to call it Tartaria or not, whether that's what they called it, we don't know. Well, that's what we call it now. We just we stuck a name on it, right? Now, many people have claimed that there may be tunnels from this earth that we live on going out under the oceans to continents beyond. And if that's the case, you could put easily 400 million Chinese people into fast trains and ship them out under the earth through a tunnel back to their original homeland. Or they could be rounded up and brought to work as slaves on this continent 3 times the size of Africa that they call the moon, and forced to work to mine for the commodities that the Chinese need. Now, this guy, Stephen Quast, gave like a 3-hour interview, I said, to Sean Ryan, and he was bringing up a lot of these topics that the Chinese are way ahead of everybody else in their space ships that float on the ocean, satellites. And Stephen Quast did say in his lecture he gave to Hillsdale College that the buoys out in the ocean were the satellites, and they were monitoring the movement of everything that went in. And I found loads and loads of ships hundreds of miles down into the so-called ice shelf on the marine traffic map. The marine traffic map doesn't lie. All ships have got transponders. They have to give off their position in case they run into difficulties, that they can receive help. So these ships are heading down. They're 700, 800, 900 miles into the ice shelf of Antarctica already. I don't believe there's any ice. Yeah, there is ice down there. It is cold, but there are passageways through. They're not showing us. They're just showing us this big white area, supposedly ice shelf, highest average altitude of any continent on Earth. So they're making their way down through and back. I don't know how many people you'd fit on one of these ships. I don't know how many people you'd fit in these train systems that they have. But with 400 million missing people, where did they go? They did not emigrate. They didn't move to the countryside because it's empty. They didn't move to another city. They're gone. So are they being used as slave labor on this landmass called the moon? Because it's a space race, and the Americans do not want the Chinese to dominate and have full control over this area called space. They want their cut. I don't think they're ready to go to war for it, because apparently he's saying that the Chinese are far, far, far more advanced in the weapon systems that they have down there, that it would be impossible to go to war with them. And if they've been moving up and down through there for centuries and centuries, over and back, they've got a pretty good setup. And America's been left behind. And NASA is a load of bullshit. It's just a money laundering operation. And it exists to fool the people in the world into believing that space is something other than what it is. Yeah. The video that is on the Sean Ryan podcast is called Steve Quast, How China is Mining the Moon and Weaponizing Space. Now, like I said, he told a load of lies. He told a load of untruths. He was giving the impression that he's talking about upper space and that light in the sky that we call the moon. He's giving the impression on the Sean Ryan podcast that that's where the Chinese are. And he's just giving Sean Ryan a different story of the moon than he gave to the people who are listening to them in Hillsdale College. So if you find my two videos and you watch them, and then you go on the Sean Ryan podcast and you hear him tell a totally different story, then you might be able to understand what I'm seeing, what I'm understanding. Because there is an issue. Maybe they haven't been talking about it so much recently because so many other things, just every week something new and huge hits the world's media and they suddenly drop last week's story and continue with this one, Jeffrey this or President that or Hillary or something that they try to get the American people to believe in, the people of the world, that is so huge that they've got nothing to do but to talk about it for a week or a fortnight. Nobody's ever going to be fucking arrested, let me tell you. None of these people are ever going to be arrested. But they've dropped off on the 400 million missing people in China. You cannot disappear 400 million people. You can lure them out, maybe they've been lured out with lucrative contracts and pay. But there's no word of what happened to them. Nobody knows what happened to them. I don't believe anything that comes out of China anyway. Never, ever do I believe anything that the mainstream media says about China. But it's not just mainstream media, it's all over social media and people in China making videos. Chinese people making videos about what's going on, where are the people, where have they all gone, missing, markets empty, shopping malls where, you know, you'd get 1 million people in there on a Saturday, gone. They're not to be seen anywhere. And this guy, Stephen Quast, who looks like something from the 50s or 40s, you know, with the cropped hair. He's a what do you call it? I was going to say a Buzz Lightyear, but I like what do you call the guy that first broke the sound barrier? Chuck Yeager, you know, that type of character. A gung-ho, out and out military person, right down to the shiny boots and the immaculate uniform and the immaculate haircut and shave, and he just looks the part. But the stories that he's telling different stories to different groups of people, but they are admitting that they're up to something. They do not want the absolute truth to get out to the world of that no one has ever been to the moon. I'm talking about the light in the sky. When they say they've been to the moon, if they've been to that continent, far side of Antarctica, that they've codenamed the moon, if they've been there, then they can say they went to the moon. They're not lying, but it's a half-truth. because of the whole world conned into believing that they went to the light in the sky in 1969 in a fucking Mark II Cortina. You know, so that was my little, I've been planning to make this video for quite some time now, but I thought I would let that Chinese story die down a little bit and, you know, try and figure out in my head what it is that I'm going to say to you, because there's a lot to remember. I hope I haven't left anything out. If you're unsure of, you know, what I'm really trying to get across to you, then go and check out my 2 videos that I will put the names of in the description, that you can type them in and they will be easily found. And get a gist of what is going on, because I might be wrong about certain things, but I'm not lying. And I know that the marine traffic map doesn't lie, and it has picked up these ships that can leave our world out across the ocean. And they are Chinese, and they're registered to that sand atoll in the South Pacific, Kiribati. And Stephen Quast did also say that people don't know this. When he was talking to Hillsdale College, and he was talking about the continent beyond Antarctica and the ships that go in and out, he said that Congress does not know this. Members of Congress do not know. High up people in government do not know. The media doesn't know. So to say that, oh, all these people, they all know what's going on. No, they fucking don't know what's going on. I mean, people in Congress, they've just got one thing on their mind. And it's usually got to do with personal enjoyment and the S word and stealing money and getting high and going to parties. They're not they're not interested in this type of knowledge. This type of knowledge is above their pay grade 1, and if you told them, they wouldn't believe you because they're so fucking stupid. They're just thieves. But he did say people in government, people in Congress, people in the Senate, people in higher places do not know this. So, letting you in on a few secrets here, people. Yeah, you can end up knowing a lot more than all these assholes think that they know. Anyway, I think I'll leave it at that. If I have any more to add, I'll do another video. I'm going to go in now and cook some dinner and chill. All right. Get back in touch with you all soon. Take good care.